Lesson 12, volume of rectangular prisms. So far with our 3D shapes, we've been looking at the surface area, so the space on the outside of a shape. Now we're going to move to volume, which is really just a way to express how much could fit inside the shape. So you can imagine for a rectangular prism, you can think about a box. How much could you fit inside a box? That's the measurement that we're going to be going for today. So how much can fit inside? And you may have in the past worked with finding volume using length times width times height. And that is a perfectly acceptable way to do it. Length times width times height to find the volume. All right, so what you would do is you do 3 times 2, that gets you a 6. Let's write that out for you for a minute. 3 times 2 is 6, and then you take your 6 and then you multiply it by that height. 6 times 3 gets you 18. And you have to write down that it is 18 cubic. And in this sense, or in this picture, I don't have any centimeters, so let's just call them units. Or you could write 18 units cubed with a little 3 behind it. Both of those are acceptable ways. My answer key is going to use the first way just because my website won't allow me to do the little 3 up by the units there. So both of those are acceptable ways to do it. So in a sense, volume is quite a lot easier, simpler, not very many steps. But let's just make sure that we understand exactly what's happening here. So the reason that I gave you a rectangular prism that's all been split into cubes is to help us understand how this volume works. So what we have really done is we have found the area of the base, and now I know you can't really see the base on this, so I'm actually going to use the top as the base. Okay, so the base, you can imagine like the bottom of the shape, though in this sense we just flipped it over, we're using the top. Okay, so what we have really done is we found the area of the base. So we have found 3 times 2. Right? Base times height to find the area of that base. So what we have ended up with are 6 cubes on the top here. I'm coloring them in green now. 6 cubes on the top. All right, and that's where the cubic units come in. So we've got 6 cubes on the top. Then you have to do a little bit of imagining. You can't really see it on this picture, but you have to imagine another layer down gets you another 6 cubes. And then the bottom layer as well gets you another 6 cubes. So if you add all of those cubes up together, you end up with 18 cubes, which is where our 18 cubic units comes from. It's just much simpler to simply multiply those 3 numbers together. And it's a little bit tricky to visualize. If we were at school, I would have cubes for you to actually look at. But I know lots of you have Rubik's Cubes. So if you have a Rubik's Cube, you can take a look at it and understand hopefully how it works. We can do the same thing with a 3x3 Rubik's Cube. I think that's what they're called. If I'm wrong, somebody send me an email and tell me. So we've got 3 cubes down, or 3 units, we could say, over here. We've got 3 this way, and then we have 3 going up. All right, so just like we did with the last one, you can think to yourself, well I'll go with the top again. It's a little easier to see. So we've got 9 cubes in the top layer. You've got another 9, and then you've got another 9 down below. And if you have a real Rubik's Cube, you can take a look at this and it makes sense. I know that actually in Rubik's Cubes, I think there's some sort of mechanism in the middle, so there wouldn't be cubes, but just imagine the mechanism's not there, and you end up with 9, 18, 27. Oops, that doesn't look like a 7, does it? 27 cubic units. All right, so that's how it works. Now, not all of your rectangular prisms today are going to be split into those cubes to help you visualize. A lot of them are going to look like this, just like a regular rectangular prism. But what you can do is you can think to yourself that you need to find the area of the base times the height. And now I mentioned that earlier and I didn't come back to it, so we'll come back to it now. For rectangular prisms, it's simple enough to just do your length times your width times your height. It's a nice, easy, simple calculation, but it's going to be useful for you if you start thinking about it as finding the area of the base and then multiplying it by the height, and that'll make more sense tomorrow. So try to get your brain already into those thought patterns of finding the area of the base and multiplying it by the height. It's just a different way to say the same thing, but it'll be helpful for you tomorrow. You got to trust me on that. All right, so for this one, I've colored the base in orange. We can see the base on this one. So you find the area of the base. So you do 10 times 3 is 30. So the area of the base is 30, in this case, inches cubed. And then you simply take the area of the base and you multiply it by the height of 4, and you end up with 120 inches cubed as your final volume. So a lot simpler, a lot fewer steps than surface area. And then one last thing I want to point out to you is that you could really, for a rectangular prism, choose any side as your base. So here I have shaded a different face of your rectangular prism. And what you can do for that one is, because there's a 4, we know that this height is a 4 right there. So we take our 4 times 3. So we're finding the area of the orange section is, oh man, I'm jumping ahead. 4 times 3 is 12. And then we take our 12 and we multiply it by what would be the height then, 10 inches. And we end up with 120 inches cubed. All right, so you can use any of the faces of a rectangular prism as long as you find the area of that face and then you multiply it by the remaining height. So you imagine whatever face you choose, imagine that as the bottom of your shape, and then use your height to the top of the shape from there, and you should be good to go. Always remember to have your units cubed. Think back to the cubes at the beginning, cubic units or units cubed for these ones. And any questions, as always, give me a call.